when you're manipulating and using any of the tools, you do have the symmetry option. So if I was to turn on the X, and let's say I just used a dragnet and I wanted to manipulate the claws, I can manipulate them again, feet, bring them in if you wish. I can come round here and manipulate certain bits, and it will do on the opposite axis of your object. And again, remember, it's doing this on the timeline for you as well. Under the object properties, you've got three options here. You've got select object. This allows you to click on a different object in your project rather than just using the control and tab shortcut or switch object file menu option. The keyboard shortcut for this is Shift and S. You've got cycle object, which switches between objects in your project, and again the shortcuts control and tab. And then you've got the remove object, which deletes an object from your project. For your view options, you've got fit all, which shortcut is A, like it is in Lightwave, to fit your whole scene in the viewport. You've got fit selected, so if you've got separate parts and you had selected one and you wanted to just concentrate on that area, it will zoom in on that area. And then you've got your reset view, which will reset it to the initial display. With the global options, you've got setup mode. This is for modifying the base geometry throughout the animation rather than just on like a certain time. The object goes to its underformed default state while you're in the setup mode. For example, if this is a character, it would be in the pose that it was modeled in before deformation are applied. You've got the global editing mode. So global editing mode is not available within the setup mode. However, if you're in global editing mode, you can also achieve setup mode to slow your geometry in its undeformed base state. Global editing mode is similar to setup mode, but you can edit at any point in the timeline and see how the deformation of your object will be affected by the modification rather than only seeing the undeformed object. Tablet mode changes cursor position from relative to absolute for use with graphic tablets. When you've actually done a sculpt on your object, down here what you get is you get your clip properties, which is basically how you use your ease in and ease out. So obviously when you're on these tools and you start doing your kind of animation and you're animating your timeline, you can then manipulate how it eases in or eases out in your timeline, like so, using the in and out options. The timeline is at the bottom of your screen. There can be 3 different colour lines within this timeline. The first shows the keyframes for the morph in yellow. The second indicates pinning in red, and the third is your geometry cache loaded, which is in blue. Keyframes can be moved in the timeline by clicking on their central dot and dragging them to where you want them. Holding Shift will allow you to drag fractional keyframes just as with navigation. The slider at the bottom can be resized to only view part of a longer scene by dragging on the arrows at either end. When smaller than the scene length, it can be repositioned in the scene by dragging on the center portion of the slider. The transport controllers is really straightforward. So the first one is to start from the beginning, to the start frame. The next button is to go to your previous keyframe. Then you've got go back 1 frame. You've got your play. You've then got your step forward 1 frame, like so. Go to next keyframe, go to the last keyframe, and then you've got the loop option. Dead straightforward.